storm hit Lake Michigan like a freight train at midnight, turning the usually calm waters into a churning cauldron of foam and fury. Marcus Chen stood at his cabin window, watching the lightning illuminate the chaos outside, when he saw something that made his blood freeze, a figure thrashing in the water, barely visible between the towering waves. Without thinking, Marcus grabbed his emergency kit and flashlight, sprinting toward the rocky shore. The rain hammered his face as he fought against the wind, his EMT training kicking in automatically. The woman was maybe 50 yards out, her head disappearing beneath the surface more often than it appeared above. "Hold on," he shouted into the storm, though he knew she couldn't hear him. Marcus dove into the frigid water, his breath catching as the cold shock hit his system. Each stroke was a battle against the current, trying to drag him under. When he finally reached her, she was unconscious, her lips blue and body limp. He wrapped his arm around her chest and began the grueling swim back to shore, fighting every wave that tried to claim them both. On the rocky beach, Marcus immediately began CPR, his hands pumping rhythmically on her chest while rain continued to pound them both. "Come on," he muttered between rescue breaths. "Come on, breathe." Water suddenly gushed from her mouth as she convulsed, coughing violently. Her eyes fluttered open, dark brown, terrified, confused. She was alive. "You're okay," Marcus said, helping her sit up. "You're safe now." He half carried her to his cabin, wrapping her in blankets while he started a fire and made hot coffee. She sat shivering on his couch, still coughing up lake water, looking fragile and lost. "I'm Marcus," he said, handing her the steaming mug. "What's your name?" "Sarah," she whispered, her voice hoarse. "Sarah Mitchell." "What were you doing in the lake during a storm, Sarah?" Her eyes darted away. I don't really remember. Everything's fuzzy." She clutched the coffee mug like a lifeline. "Thank you. You saved my life." Marcus studied her face, noting the way she avoided eye contact, the practiced vagueness of her answers. But she was clearly traumatized, and pressing her for details seemed cruel. "You can stay here tonight. The couch is comfortable, and you need rest." "I don't want to impose." "It's no imposition. I'm an EMT. I've seen hypothermia before. You need to stay warm and dry." That night, Marcus gave her a pair of his ex-wife's old pajamas that he'd never gotten around to donating, made sure she had extra blankets, and left a glass of water and some aspirin on the coffee table. Sarah seemed genuinely grateful, tears in her eyes as she thanked him again. "I don't know how to repay you," she said. "Just get better," Marcus replied. "That's payment enough." He woke at dawn to silence. Too much silence. The storm had passed, leaving behind crisp morning air and golden sunlight streaming through his windows. But something felt wrong. "Sarah," he called out, walking to the living room. The couch was empty, blankets neatly folded. She was gone. So was his wallet from the kitchen counter, his grandmother's antique ring from the jewelry box in his bedroom, the emergency cash he kept in his desk drawer, $800. Marcus stood in his ransacked bedroom, feeling like he'd been punched in the stomach. He'd saved her life, offered her shelter and kindness, and she'd robbed him blind. The ring especially stung. It was the only thing he had left of his grandmother, the woman who'd raised him after his parents died. He called the police, but Officer Martinez just shook his head sympathetically. "No ID, fake name, probably long gone by now. These people are professionals, Marcus. They prey on good Samaritans like you." "I thought she was drowning," Marcus said, still trying to process what had happened. "Maybe she was. Maybe that was part of the act. Either way, you did what you thought was right. Don't let this stop you from helping people." But it did stop him, at least partially. Over the next 3 weeks, Marcus found himself second-guessing every instinct to help. When Mrs. Marcus Patterson's car broke down on the highway, he almost drove past before his conscience forced him to stop. When a hiker got lost on the trail behind his cabin, Marcus helped search but kept wondering if it was some elaborate setup. The betrayal had changed something fundamental in him. His grandmother's voice echoed in his memory. "Always help those in need, Marcus. It's what makes us human." But what did you do when helping made you a victim? Marcus threw himself into work, pulling double shifts at the hospital and volunteering for every fire department call. Staying busy kept him from thinking about trusting eyes that had lied to him, about genuine gratitude that had been perfectly performed. He was questioning everything he'd believed about human nature, about his own judgment, about whether kindness was just another word for stupidity. The ring was gone forever, but the doubt she'd planted in his heart felt like it might be permanent. 3 weeks after the theft, another storm rolled across Lake Michigan. Marcus Chen had always been the guy people called when they needed help. At 34, he'd built his entire identity around being useful, as an EMT racing to save lives, as a volunteer firefighter running into burning buildings, as the neighbor who'd fix your fence or jumpstart your car without being asked. The lakeside cabin had been his grandmother's, passed down to him when she died 2 years ago. It was supposed to be his fresh start after the divorce, a place where he could heal and figure out who he was when he wasn't trying to save his marriage. Instead, it had become another kind of refuge, a place where he could retreat from the world when helping others became too much to bear. Grandma Chen had raised him after his parents died in a car accident when he was 8. She'd taught him Mandarin, made him memorize her old Chinese proverbs, and above all, drilled into him the importance of helping others. When you help someone, she used to say, you help yourself. It's how we stay connected to what matters. The divorce had shattered that philosophy. 3 years of trying to help Jessica with her drinking, making excuses for her, enabling her, before finally accepting that you couldn't save someone who didn't want to be saved. Now he worked double shifts partly to pay the bills, but mostly to avoid coming home to the empty cabin where silence reminded him of all his failures. People in town knew Marcus as reliable, selfless, maybe a little too trusting. What they didn't see was the loneliness that drove his need to be needed, the way helping others filled the hole left by failed relationships and premature loss. He'd never learned to connect with people as equals, only as their rescuer. The doorbell rang at 11:47 p.m., 3 weeks and 2 days after the theft. Marcus almost didn't answer it. Another storm was building outside, and late-night visitors rarely brought good news. But when lightning illuminated the figure on his porch, his heart nearly stopped. It was her, Sarah, or whoever she really was. But she looked nothing like the composed woman who'd disappeared with his belongings. This version was terrified, soaked to the bone, with a purple bruise blooming across her left cheek and blood dried beneath her nose. "Please," she gasped when he opened the door. "They're going to kill me." Marcus stood frozen, his hand still on the doorknob. Every instinct screamed at him to slam the door, to call the police, to protect himself from whatever con she was running now. But the fear in her eyes looked real. The injuries looked real. "You have some nerve coming back here," he said. I know, and I'm sorry, but please." She glanced over her shoulder at the empty driveway, then back at him with desperate eyes. "You're the only person who ever helped me without wanting something in return. I didn't know where else to go. Who's trying to kill you? The people I stole from, before I took your things." Her voice broke. "My name isn't Sarah Mitchell. It's Elena Vasquez, and I'm in serious trouble." Marcus studied her face, looking for the lies he'd missed before. But exhaustion and terror were hard to fake, and she was practically swaying on her feet. "Why should I trust you? You robbed me. Because of this." Elena reached into her pocket and pulled out his grandmother's ring, the silver band catching the porch light. "I kept it. I don't know why, but I couldn't bring myself to sell it. Maybe because it reminded me that there are still good people in the world." Marcus stared at the ring, his grandmother's ring, sitting in the palm of the woman who'd stolen it. The gesture felt significant, though he couldn't say why. "They tracked me here," Elena continued. "Saw security footage from that gas station down the road. They know I'm in the area, and they know I was here before. If they find me..." She touched the bruise on her face. This was just a warning. Thunder rumbled overhead, and Marcus felt the weight of another impossible choice. Turn away the woman who'd betrayed him, or risk everything to help her again. "If I let you in," he said slowly, "I want the truth. All of it. No more lies." Elena nodded, tears mixing with rainwater on her cheeks. "Everything. I promise." Marcus made Elena sit at his kitchen table while he got the first aid kit, his EMT training overriding his personal feelings. Her injuries weren't life-threatening, but they told a story of recent violence. "Start talking," he said, cleaning the cut on her lip. "My ex-boyfriend, Carlos, he's involved with some very bad people. Money laundering, mostly. But they're not the kind of organization you just walk away from." Elena winced as he applied antiseptic. "I tried to leave him 6 months ago. That's when I learned he'd been using my name on bank accounts, making me complicit whether I knew it or not. So you decided to steal from them. I was desperate. I took $40,000 from one of their accounts, thinking I could disappear, start over somewhere else. But they found me in Chicago, beat me up, took back their money plus interest." She gestured to older fading bruises Marcus hadn't noticed before. "That's when I ended up in the lake that night. I was running from them, fell off the pier in the dark." Marcus paused his medical work. "You really were drowning." "Yeah, and you really did save my life." Elena met his eyes. "I was going to leave that morning without taking anything, I swear. But then I saw your wallet on the counter, and I panicked. I thought if I could just get enough money for a bus ticket, I could get far enough away that they'd never find me. Instead, you led them right back here. I know. I'm sorry. I never meant to put you in danger." As if summoned by her words, headlights swept across the cabin windows. Marcus killed the lights and peered through the curtains. 2 black SUVs had pulled into his driveway, their engines still running. "Back door," Marcus whispered. "Now." They slipped out through his rear exit just as the front door exploded inward. Marcus grabbed his emergency pack and led Elena into the woods behind his cabin, following trails he'd known since childhood. Behind them, flashlight beams cut through the darkness, and angry voices shouted orders in Spanish. For the next hour, they moved through the forest like hunted animals. Marcus used his knowledge of the terrain to stay ahead of their pursuers, while Elena struggled to keep up with her injuries. When she stumbled and cried out, Marcus had to make a quick decision. They needed a place to hide. The old fire tower had been abandoned for years, but it was elevated and hidden by tree cover. Marcus helped Elena climb the rusty ladder, both of them breathing hard when they reached the small observation deck. "Why did you come back?" Marcus asked as they huddled in the darkness. "You could have kept running." "Because I couldn't stop thinking about what you said that night. Just get better. That's payment enough." Elena's voice was barely a whisper. "No one's ever helped me without expecting something. My whole life, every kindness came with a price. But you just helped. And you repaid me by stealing from me. I know, and I've regretted it every single day since. She pulled his grandmother's ring from her pocket again. I've been carrying this around like some kind of talisman, reminding myself that good people exist. I was going to mail it back to you, but I didn't know how to explain. Marcus took the ring, feeling its familiar weight. My grandmother gave this to me before she died. She said it would remind me to always help people, no matter what. She sounds like she was a good woman. She was. She raised me after my parents died, taught me that helping others is what makes us human. Marcus looked at Elena. I've been questioning that philosophy lately. Because of what I did to you. Partly. Marcus was quiet for a moment. My ex-wife was an alcoholic. I spent 3 years trying to save her, making excuses, enabling her addiction because I thought that's what love meant. When she finally left, I wondered if I was just addicted to being needed. Elena studied his face in the moonlight. Maybe that's true. But you saved my life that night, and you're helping me again now, even though I hurt you. That's not addiction. That's character. Below them, flashlight beams swept through the forest, getting closer. Dawn broke gray and threatening as Marcus and Elena heard engines converging on their position. They'd been spotted. Elena Vasquez. A voice called from below. We know you're up there. Come down and we'll make this quick. Marcus peered over the edge of the platform. 4 men surrounded the base of the tower, all armed. There was no way down except past them. I have to go, Elena whispered. This is my mess. I won't let you die for my mistakes. Nobody's dying today, Marcus said, though he wasn't sure how he could deliver on that promise. Elena, the voice called again. You cost us time and money, but we're reasonable people. Give us what we're owed, and your friend doesn't have to suffer for your choices. Elena reached into her jacket and pulled out a thick envelope. Your $800, she said to Marcus. I never spent it. I kept thinking I'd find a way to give it back. You've been carrying my money around for 3 weeks, along with the ring. I guess I wanted to believe I wasn't really a thief if I never actually used what I stole. She stood up, preparing to call down to the men below. I'm coming down. I have what you want. No. Marcus grabbed her arm. There has to be another way. Look at them, Marcus. They're not here to negotiate. They're here to make an example. Elena pulled free from his grip. You saved my life once. Let me save yours. But as Elena moved toward the ladder, Marcus made a decision that surprised them both. He grabbed the emergency flare from his pack and fired it directly at the nearest SUV. The red phosphorus burst into brilliant flame, and suddenly the forest was filled with smoke and chaos. What are you doing? Elena shouted. Changing the rules, Marcus replied, firing a second flare. The men below scattered as the vegetation caught fire. Marcus had calculated the wind direction. The flames would spread away from the tower, creating a barrier between them and their pursuers. But it also meant they had to move fast. There's a creek about a quarter-mile north, Marcus said. If we can reach it, we can follow it downstream to the main road. They climbed down the far side of the tower and ran through smoke-filled woods. Behind them, gunshots rang out, but the visibility was too poor for accurate shooting. Marcus led Elena through terrain that seemed impossible to navigate, using every skill he'd learned as a volunteer firefighter. When they reached the creek, Elena collapsed on the bank, exhausted and bleeding from several cuts. I can't go any further, she gasped. Yes, you can. Marcus knelt beside her, checking her pulse and breathing. You survived an abusive relationship, a criminal organization, and drowning in Lake Michigan. You're tougher than you think. Why are you helping me? After everything I've done? Marcus looked at this woman who turned his life upside down, who challenged everything he believed about trust and human nature. Because my grandmother was right. Helping others is what makes us human. And maybe I needed to learn that being human means helping imperfect people, not just perfect victims. The sound of approaching sirens filled the air. Marcus had triggered his emergency beacon when they first reached the tower, and help was finally arriving. But their pursuers were close behind, crashing through the underbrush with desperate determination. The final confrontation happened at the creek's edge. The lead gunman emerged from the smoke just as the first police car arrived at the road above them. In that moment of standoff, Elena made her choice. Instead of running toward the safety of the police, she stayed beside Marcus, ready to face whatever came next together. The next few weeks passed in a blur of legal proceedings and media attention. Elena's cooperation with federal investigators helped uncover a money laundering operation that stretched across 3 states. Carlos and his associates were arrested, and Elena's testimony was crucial in securing their convictions. Marcus testified at Elena's sentencing hearing, speaking about her transformation and the courage she'd shown in facing her past. The judge sentenced her to 2 years of probation and 500 hours of community service, acknowledging both her crimes and her cooperation with authorities. I don't expect forgiveness, Elena told Marcus after the hearing, but I want to make things right. She got a job waiting tables at Millie's diner in town, working double shifts to repay not just the money she'd stolen, but also the cost of the damage to Marcus's cabin. Every week she brought him an envelope with whatever she could spare from her paycheck. The town's reaction was mixed. Some people admired Marcus's faith in Elena's redemption, while others questioned his judgment. You're either a saint or a fool, Officer Martinez told him one day. I'm not sure which. Marcus wasn't sure either. But he watched Elena work at the diner, saw how she treated the elderly customers with patience and kindness, noticed how she volunteered to work holidays so her coworkers could be with their families. This wasn't the desperate woman who'd robbed him. This was someone choosing to be better. Elena found a small apartment above the hardware store and slowly began building a life based on honesty rather than survival. She attended therapy sessions, paid her taxes, and gradually earned the trust of people who'd initially been suspicious of her presence in their community. 6 months later, Elena asked Marcus to meet her at the lakeshore where he'd first pulled her from the water. She'd finished paying back the money she'd stolen and wanted to return his grandmother's ring in the place where their story began. "I've been thinking about what you said that night," Elena said, holding out the ring. "About how helping others makes us human. I want to try being human for a while." Marcus took the ring but didn't put it away. Instead, he held it out to Elena. "My grandmother told me this ring would remind me to always help people, but I think she would have said it belongs with someone who needs that reminder more than I do. I can't accept this." "You're not accepting it. You're earning it." Marcus smiled. "Elena, I watched you choose to stay and help instead of running when things got dangerous. I watched you work every day to make amends instead of disappearing when it got hard. You're already living what this ring represents." Elena's eyes filled with tears as she took the ring. "I don't know how to thank you. Just keep being the person you've chosen to become." That evening, both Marcus and Elena responded to their first emergency call together. She'd started EMT training the month before, inspired by Marcus's example of service. As they worked to stabilize a car accident victim, Marcus realized that Elena's return to his life had healed something in him too. She'd taught him that trust wasn't about finding perfect people to help, but about believing in people's capacity to change. The story that had begun with betrayal ended with redemption, not just Elena's but Marcus's as well. He'd learned that being human meant helping people not because they deserved it, but because everyone deserved the chance to become who they were meant to be.